Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 3rd of April, comes to you from London. So we're back from Easter and taking a look at markets. And key thing is the US has fallen further. Yesterday, the US markets were open with news of the Chinese retaliating on the trade war. So we're seeing not much movement in currencies. Dollar has been quite flat actually for the last week, and consequently the euro has as well. Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar just tailing off a little bit here and turning slightly bearish. Against sterling, sterling actually weakened over just in the run-up to Easter last week, and if we look at against the dollar, much the same picture. Looking against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling just slightly strengthening, but against the Australian dollar, just a bit weaker. So interestingly, we're just really not seeing much action in currencies at all, to be honest. What is interesting is Bitcoin. We're seeing a little bit of a resurgence here, back into bullish territory on the short-term targets. We've got an upside target of 7.5%. We're still bearish in the medium term. We do seem to be finding support around this 6,500 area. That's where we went to on Good Friday. So interestingly, we are seeing a bit of a recovery there in Bitcoin. Of course, the big news for markets overnight was that the US market sold off quite heavily. The S&P down 2%. This is really starting to look like a top. We're seeing the lower low coming in now. We've currently got support at around 2,500, but interestingly, we are now testing that level. We're bearish and on the short term, and we've got downside target potential of 4% and the medium term targets. We haven't yet activated these targets on the medium and long term charts, so that's going to be the key. If we activate those downside targets, then we could see the market fall back quite significantly. Nasdaq has activated the downside targets here, both on the long and short-term chart. So tech is what is driving the market down. It's what drove the market up last year. Tech is driving it down this year, and we have activated those downside targets, so that's quite key. About 12 to 13% downside on those medium-term targets, long-term targets. So if we do see a lower low close of a few days, then almost certainly we're going to start looking at these targets a lot more seriously. Japanese yen, the Dow Jones we're seeing is also testing new lows, and so that's looking pretty bearish as well, having activated downside targets also. And the Russell 2000, just to show that this fall was across the board, down 2.4% overnight. So all the small caps in the US now following suit. So we are just seeing the sell-off setting in. The futures this morning are up. The S&P future up about 0.4%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up nearly 0.5%. So we are seeing the futures market suggesting a small recovery on Wall Street, but at the moment that's very small compared to the moves that we saw last night. FTSE down 0.2%, back into never really managed to get bullish on the short-term chart. Here we are really seeing the lower low effect, so we're back to levels that we were a year ago on the FTSE. UK market just looking really much in the doldrums. Much the same picture on the 250, just struggling to get through, and down nearly 1% this morning. The DAX off 1%, CAC also off 2/3%. Japan was down 1/4%, so not so bad overnight. The Hang Seng was up very, very slightly. China was down nearly 1% and looking bearish, more and more bearish all the time, in fact. And the Sensex we're seeing here just struggling to get through in the Indian market, and the Australian market also just struggling. Crude oil, Brent's back below the $70 level. We had quite a fall off yesterday on Brent, and so we are bearish in the short term, bearing in mind that we are heading into this second part of the year soon where oil tends to fall, and we just are struggling to make it above this $70 level. There's quite strong resistance there, but for the moment we've got a short-term downside potential of about 1.5%. We do still have quite a lot of long-term upside targets, so crude is still looking bullish in the medium to long-term charts. Same with WTI, much the same as you would expect. US nat gas sitting at $2.69, just holding the cloud here, but really has been in the doldrums for quite some time. Big moves yesterday in gold on that China news, and back into bullish territory. We've activated sorry, this is silver. We've activated a new upside target to 1740. So we are seeing the short term looking a bit better. The medium and long term on silver still looks a little bit mixed. Looking at gold, just starting to get back into bullish territory, but struggling here a little bit. We still do have this 1382 target to look forward to. Key thing is, can we break this level? Can we move higher and show signs of a breakout? Still looks bullish medium to long term. US 10-year yield sitting at 2.75%. So bearish for the moment, just struggling to move up. And of course, the big news was tech. Apple was down 0.2%. So fared fairly well actually, but Amazon was down 5% on Trump comments and really pulling back now on Amazon. So we're short-term bearish, downside target here on the short-term chart of 17%, but no real medium and long-term target. So we can't pay too much attention to that. Looking at Google was down 2.5% as well. So interestingly, we're just seeing all the tech majors really struggling. And if we take a look at Facebook, also lower there. And last of all, looking at the Microsoft chart, also bearish there too. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.